Welcome back to No Fear Equity. In the last two episodes, we ran through the basics of fundraising for your startup using safes and convertible notes. In this episode, we'll tackle one of the biggest points of confusion for founders raising their seed round, the difference between a pre-money safe and a post-money safe. Let's get into it. All right, so quick disclaimer before we start. In this episode, we're going to talk about valuation caps. So if you need a refresher on how valuation caps work, pause this lesson and go check out lesson 2. The link's right downstairs in the description. And with that said, let's dive in. You're raising your seed round and you've decided to fundraise on a safe, but suddenly you're presented with a question. Do you want to raise on a pre-money safe or a post-money safe? And you're like, what is that? Now, on first blush, you might think these two things are interchangeable, but it's actually not that simple. Whether you choose to raise money on a pre-money or post-money safe can actually have a real effect on how you, the founder, get diluted in your ownership of the company, which is tricky because you're being asked to make this decision before you even know what these things are yet. So in order to understand how pre-money and post-money safes differ, we first have to take a step back and understand how valuations work. A valuation comes into the picture when you raise a priced round, like a Series A. An investor gives you money and you give that investor shares, which means you have to decide how much each share is worth, which means you have to decide how much the whole company is worth. And a valuation is just that, a number that defines how much your whole company is worth. But here's the thing, when you take money from an investor, you're actually increasing the value of your company just by accepting the money. For example, your company might be worth $4 million today, but then an investor gives you another $1 million, and now your company is worth $5 million total. So you can see how just by accepting the money, you increased the valuation of your company by $1 million. What this means is that when you raise your Series A, there are 3 stages to the process. First, there's the amount of money your company is worth before you raise funds. Then there's the actual infusion of capital into your business. And finally, there's the amount of money your company is worth after your fundraise is over. Step 1 is what we call the pre-money valuation, and step 3 is what we call the post-money valuation. Simple enough, right? But it actually makes a big difference when talking about one major thing, the percentage of your company that everyone owns. Here's an example. You're raising your Series A. Your investor's a nice guy. His name is Maximus. Maximus wants to give you $1 million on a $4 million valuation. But before you take that money, you gotta ask, is that a pre-money or a post-money valuation? If it's pre-money, then your company was worth $4 million before Maximus walked in the door. This means he'll give you $1 million, your company will now be worth $5 million, and he'll own 20% of the whole company. But if Maximus wants the valuation to be post-money, that means your company will be worth $4 million after Maximus gives you his investment, which means he now has a $1 million stake in a $4 million company, which is an ownership stake of 25%. So you can see the general idea here. Pre-money and post-money matter because they affect the percentage of the company that everybody's gonna own. And understanding that is the key to understanding the difference between pre-money safes and post-money safes. Okay, so right up top, we always recommend talking to your legal counsel when hashing out the details of any contract. But in order to understand the high-level difference between pre-money and post-money safes, you don't necessarily have to be a math whiz. All you have to remember is the thing we just discussed. Pre-money and post-money matter because they affect the percentage of the company that everyone's gonna own. Now, of course, in this example, we're gonna talk about the seed round and the Series A, but just know safes convert in connection with a qualified financing, however you define that qualified financing in your safe documentation. In this example, we'll use a Series A, but just know what we really mean is qualified financing. So with that said, let's first talk about pre-money safes. You're raising a seed round. You take money from a whole bunch of different investors in the form of safes, which means you're not giving them any shares yet because there's no valuation yet. What you are doing is promising to give them shares later when you raise your Series A. Okay, so close your eyes for a second and pretend that you're one of those investors. If you're an investor, right now, there's a whole lot of uncertainty in your life. You know you're gonna get shares in this company at some point, but what percentage of the company do you own compared to all the other safe investors in the equation? Is it 2%, 10%? Unfortunately, right now, there's no way to really know. The only way to know the answer to this question is to wait and see how all the complex math plays out in 12 to 18 months when your safe note converts at Series A. Because remember, and this is important, there's more than one safe investment in the picture here. In fact, there's a whole bunch of safes. So when the Series A funds hit your bank account and all those different safe contracts convert into shares, they're all going to mathematically affect each other. And when the dust settles, everyone, from the founders to the safe investors, will know exactly what percentage of the company they own. At that point, the new Series A investors will enter the picture and everyone's ownership will be diluted accordingly. Now, obviously, we're breaking it up into distinct steps for this example, but it's important to know that in essence, all these things are happening in one fell swoop. To recap, you can think of it like this. With a pre-money safe, the ownership percentage of both you and your investors is let's wait and see. And that is the key difference between a pre-money safe and a post-money safe. Post-money safes work a little differently. High level, the important thing to know is that unlike a pre-money safe where we're going to wait for all that math to play out before we know everyone's percentage, with a post-money safe, the investor gives you money and effectively locks in the percentage of your company that they're gonna own just before the Series A investors get mixed in. For example, let's say Maximus invests in your seed round on a safe. He gives you $1 million on a $10 million post-money valuation cap. So it's a post-money safe. 1 million divided by 10 million is 10%. So because it's a post-money safe, Maximus has effectively predetermined that in relation to you, the founder, and all the other safe investors, he'll have a 10% ownership in your company. But his predetermined 10% will obviously be affected because the Series A investors are coming in hot. So while Maximus doesn't have a guaranteed ownership percentage at the end of the whole Series A, the post-money safe gives him a way better idea of where he's going to ultimately land. Now, obviously, this is really nice for everyone because it gives a lot of clarity. When you use a post-money safe, you and your investors have a much better idea from the very beginning about who is going to own what percentage when the safe converts. And that's a nice thing. It's good for everyone to be on the same page. But as a founder, there's an extra ingredient that you need to keep in mind, which is that because you've locked in everyone's percentages, when you raise your Series A and convert everyone's safe notes, none of them are going to mathematically affect each other. Their percentages will stay locked and fixed no matter how many other safe investors are involved in the round, which means none of those safe investors are going to dilute each other's ownership percentages. Instead, they'll just dilute you, the founder. Now, of course, once the Series A investors enter the picture, the raise will now continue as normal with the entire group being diluted by these new money investors. So obviously, investors tend to favor the post-money version because while it doesn't give total certainty, it does give them more certainty than the pre-money version does, which is why they've helped to popularize it over the years. It really benefits them, and it also simplifies things for them. If the valuation cap amounts to 5%, then they know ultimately, in relation to you, the founder, and the other safe investors, they're going to have their 5%. At the end of the day, the truth is post-money safes usually work out to be more favorable for the investor. But as a founder, there are benefits for you too. It can be really helpful to know what percentage of your company you're giving away today, and it makes negotiating with investors a lot simpler and more transparent. On the other hand, depending on how you're planning to grow your company, a pre-money safe might actually be more friendly for you as it could potentially result in less dilution down the line. At the end of the day, the mistake we see most founders make is treating pre-money and post-money safes like they're interchangeable. When negotiating with investors, they decide on a valuation cap first and then decide if the safe is going to be pre-money or post-money. At Carta, we think the smarter thing to do is to talk with your investors about pre or post-money first and then decide on the valuation cap afterward. This way you can make sure you have all the necessary information to make the right decision for your business. And if it's helpful, we have a totally free, easy to use calculator where you can model out your safes and convertible notes and know exactly what you're getting into before you sign on the dotted line. If you want to use that, go ahead and take a look at the link right downstairs in the description. All right, so that concludes our 3-part mini-series on safes and convertible notes. If you have any questions or suggestions for other topics you'd like to see covered, please do leave them down below in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe for more pro tips about all things related to equity and startup fundraising. Thanks for watching No Fear Equity. We hope you found it helpful, and we'll see you on the next one.